You are watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
A white Christmas for millions of people across the country. Tonight, we are tracking the severe weather threats for that post-holiday travel then.
A lot of us are working 6-7 days in a row at this point to try and make some money for the holidays. We want to be able to do that without having to work constantly.
The Starbucks strike, where it stands tonight, and why those organizers warn more shops could soon see walkouts. And later, the price tag for national security at our southern border, the cost of Donald Trump's deportation plans, and why the incoming border czar says it's fiscally worth it. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. Thank you so much for joining us on this Christmas and first night of Hanukkah. From the Pacific Northwest to New England, millions today waking up to a white Christmas. In fact, the Big Apple seeing its first white Christmas in some 15 years. Forecasters were actually out there with the National Weather Service in Central Park today measuring that recent snowfall. Looking ahead here, millions will be in the path of severe weather for tomorrow. From central and east Texas all the way to Oklahoma, rounds of rain and storms will soak much of the south. Damaging winds and possible tornadoes will be the primary threats there. And a series of storms are set to slam the Pacific Northwest. Forecasters now predicting that more than a foot of rain will fall across western Washington, Oregon, even northern California. We continue tonight to follow that nationwide walkout at Starbucks, impacting hundreds of stores nationwide, thousands of baristas as well. It looks like the strike will continue after the Christmas holiday. Workers United, the organizing union here, first said it would last only 5 days, ending last night, but then posted this on their Facebook page. Make no mistake, this is just the beginning. We will keep fighting until Starbucks presents workers with a serious economic proposal at the bargaining table. Starbucks has offered a 1.5% raise for all of its workers, but that union says that is not nearly enough. New York City subway crime continues. Police arresting a knife-wielding man who they say slashed 2 people last night at Grand Central Station. Both now expected to recover and be okay. That tonight, according to police. Now, last year on Christmas Day, another knife-wielding attacker stabbed 2 girls on the subway. And this, of course, coming after a high-profile subway attack over the weekend where a woman was burned to death. Convicted killer Drew Johnson is back in custody tonight out of southeast Mississippi. Deputies there in George County were searching for Johnson after he was able to escape from prison last night. Johnson is serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole for murder, as well as a series of other violent crimes spanning multiple states. Deputies continue their search for a vandal who wrecked this iconic Christmas display in Leavenworth, Washington. Police say that wanted driver did damaging donuts. The town is known for its holiday cheer and has more than 500,000 lights on display during the winter months.
I reckon it like the Grinch and the story of the Grinch. You try to take Christmas away, but guess what? People are going to have a great time here regardless.
Considering Leavenworth opens this place up for everyone from all over, and that's how it gets treated around here, is just really unfortunate.
The sheriff's office there saying the suspect is a white male in his 20s or 30s. The truck to be on the lookout for tonight, a 2024 silver Toyota Tundra with a Texas license plate. Health officials out of Los Angeles now urging pet owners to avoid feeding their animals any raw food after samples from one food vendor tested positive for bird flu. Northwest Naturals issuing a recall of its raw and frozen pet food after finding the virus in some of its products. A pet in Oregon recently died after eating contaminated raw frozen pet food. More than 24 people survived a deadly plane crash in Kazakhstan today. Today, authorities report, though, that 38 passengers and crew members were killed. The attempted emergency landing here, all caught on this passenger video here. You can see the plane engulfed in flames after it crashed. Survivors were seen dragging other passengers away from that wreckage. Really dramatic video here. The plane was heading from Azerbaijan to Russia. Russian aviation leaders said a bird strike led to that emergency on board, while Azerbaijani officials said it is too soon to determine the official cause. President-elect Donald Trump has promised to crack down on big tech companies in his second term. filling his staff now with people who hope to do the same. But in recent weeks, Trump has been building relationships with tech industry leaders he's criticized for years. National correspondent Atra Elnishar tonight reporting on what this could mean for the apps we use every day.
Big tech billionaires trying to break into President-elect Trump's inner circle. His inaugural fund getting million-dollar donations from Mark Zuckerberg's Meta, Jeff Bezos' Amazon, and OpenAI CEO Sam Altman. X's Elon Musk calls himself the first buddy.
I want to get ideas from them. Look, we want them to do well.
Tech companies, especially social media platforms, know they have a lot to lose. In addition to an incoming president who's accused them of censoring conservative speech, gripes with social media companies, from privacy to child safety, are some of the few things Democrats and Republicans in Congress can agree on. Scrutiny of their industry is about to get more intense. Take Trump's pick to lead the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr.
For too long, Republicans just sat by and said, look, if a large corporation wants to do something, who are we to stand in the way? And Democrats said, well, they're ideologically aligned with us, so we'll let them get away with it. I think that era is over.
Carr wrote an entire chapter in Project 2025 about how the FCC should be run, which includes making it easier to sue social media companies over how they moderate content. Platforms say that would force them to either moderate nothing or everything, drastically changing the landscape of the internet. Then there's the issue of TikTok. The company's last hope for dodging a ban in the U.S. could come from the Supreme Court. Or Trump may try to throw out a lifeline once he's in office.
I have a warm spot in my heart for TikTok.
Other companies on notice are Google and Apple. Gail Slater has been nominated to lead the Department of Justice's Antitrust Division and will pick up ongoing cases against the companies seeking to end what the DOJ says are anti-competitive practices. When he nominated Slater, Trump said, "Big tech has run wild for years, stifling competition in our most innovative sector." Time will tell if Trump follows through on plans to crack down on big tech, as its top executives try to convince him he has more to gain by working with them. In Washington, I'm Atra Elnishar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Walmart now being sued by the federal government, accused of opening costly deposit accounts for 1 million of its delivery drivers, gig workers. That according to a newly filed lawsuit. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau now claiming drivers were forced to use the accounts to get paid and deceived about how to access their money. The government agency now saying those drivers wound up paying more than $10 million in so-called junk fees just to get the earnings out of their accounts of choosing. Companies cannot force workers into getting paid through accounts that drain their earnings with junk fees. Walmart says the lawsuit is riddled with factual errors and says it was never allowed an opportunity to present its side of the case. Tonight, more than 100 members of Utah's National Guard are back home spending Christmas with their family and friends after a year and a half of serving overseas. Tonight, the National News Desk's Leslie Duarte was there for that heartfelt reunion.
A moment filled with love and tears of joy as families welcome their soldiers home for Christmas.
We grew up as the only two kids, and so I got my best friend back.
We came home for Christmas, so we're excited about that for sure.
Dad Corey Meller, a military member himself, says his son's homecoming is extra special.
A lot of people standing here have been to those for me, but to have one for my own son, it's a little surreal.
Staff Sergeant Carson Meller spent a year overseas in Africa with the Utah Army National Guard's 204th Maneuver Enhancement Brigade, where he supported the U.S. and allied forces in state embassies.
I did tear up a little bit in the plane, just finally seeing them after so long, and it's good to be back with all my family and loved ones, and it's a long deployment.
And on this Christmas Eve, with a warm embrace, our military families got the best gift one could get.
Love your loved ones. Give them a big hug. Wish them Merry Christmas, because life can change on a dime.
Next here on the National News Desk, Pope Francis giving his yearly Christmas address. He is called for lasting peace with the start of Jubilee. Come January, it will be a new political dynamic in Washington, D.C. What working in the minority will look like for Democrats on Capitol Hill, and later rising health care costs inside the fees being passed down to patients, and what it's really costing you. At the Vatican, Pope Francis addressing thousands of people at St. Peter's Square, blessing the holiday and praying for peace, but in what usually is an uplifting and joyous speech, the reality of war bringing a somber tone to his message. The Pope appealing to all warring sides in the world to end violence and bring peace between enemies.
May the sound of weapons be silenced in Ukraine. May there be the boldness needed to open the door to negotiation and to gestures of dialogue and encounter in order to achieve a just and lasting peace. May the sound of arms be silenced in the Middle East. In contemplating the crib of Bethlehem, I think of the Christian communities in Israel and Palestine, and particularly to the dear community of Gaza, where the humanitarian situation is extremely grave.
In Ukraine today, the Christmas holiday offering no sanctuary in Kyiv. Overnight, Ukraine's capital hit with a massive barrage of missiles targeting the city's energy infrastructure. At least 70 missiles and more than 100 drones, causing widespread blackouts there. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky condemning Russian President Vladimir Putin, calling the attack deliberate to hit on the holiday. Now to the Middle East, a long-awaited hostage ceasefire deal remains elusive. Both Israel and Hamas blaming each other for moving the goalpost on a pause to the fighting and to potentially bring home any hostages. Hamas says Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu keeps adding conditions every time a deal is struck, while Netanyahu says Hamas can't be trusted and refuses to give updates on which hostages are still alive. Democrats were swept out of power in the November election and are left to regroup for at least another 2 years. National correspondent Matt Gelka now reporting on where the party goes from here and what their plans are with limited power in Washington, D.C.
Democrats lost the White House and the Senate and failed to flip the House. With Republicans set to steer the country, Kamala Harris has urged members of her party to not give up.
But let me be very clear. No one can walk away. No one can walk away. We must stay in the fight.
It's an uphill battle, and Ken Martin, one of the candidates running to be the next chair of the Democratic National Committee, didn't mince words about the election losses.
All important policy arenas that we need to be competing in because we're getting our butts kicked right there.
While Republicans have control in D.C., the margins are slim. The GOP will have a 220 to 215 majority in the House and a 53-47 majority in the Senate, meaning Democrats have some negotiating power if all Republicans are not on board with a piece of legislation. Some Democrats are looking to show the parties can work together.
Folks want to see governance work. Bipartisanship, and especially in the House where the margins are really, really tight, it means collaborating at the beginning to move legislation forward. And I will be hopeful, but obviously the majority kind of defines the tone there.
But there are serious priority gaps among the two parties, likely leading to plenty of congressional fights.
Certainly mass deportation. We have a significant part of California's population that every day work hard to put food on America's dinner table that are undocumented. But that workforce is critical.
When the new Congress gets sworn in, some Democrats will already be thinking about the 2026 midterms and how to win back voters that ushered in a Republican trifecta.
The Democratic Party should have one simple mission, and that is to address the economic hardships and struggles of many Americans, not just working class Americans, a large slice of Americans who feel the American dream has slipped away.
It's likely to look different for Democrats this time around than it did during Trump's first term, when complete resistance was the game plan. That message clearly flopped this past November, causing the party to reevaluate going forward. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
One of the biggest political fights to come next year will be President-elect Donald Trump's deportation plan of illegal migrants. And now we're getting a new idea of just how much it could cost U.S. taxpayers. Incoming border czar Tom Homan says the White House will need about $86 billion to kickstart Trump's program, but adds he sees a financial upside.
They need to understand, yeah, it's going to be expensive in the beginning, but in the long run, it's going to save billions of dollars of taxpayers' money.
Now, Homan says money will pay for more detention beds, deportation flights, and other transportation expenses to move illegal migrants out of the U.S. Health warning now tonight. The USDA recalling about 10,000 pounds of bologna and sausage over two separate notices. 7,500 pounds of raw pork sausage from Baltimore-based Impero Foods and Meats now being pulled from store shelves because it was processed without passing inspection. Plus, more than 3,000 pounds of ready-to-eat pork and bologna from Ralph's Packing Company may contain milk without proper labels, which of course could pose a serious health risk to anyone with a milk allergy. We have reporters stationed across the country covering the issues that matter most to you on this Christmas. We're taking the pulse of America tonight. We start at a Texas animal shelter and their heartwarming holiday pet adoptions.
We're excited. I think he's excited, hopefully.
Drew and Sydney Willoughby are ready for a pet.
We'll be comforting him, and hopefully he kind of does the same to us.
But they aren't sure it's the right time, which is why after little Henrik caught their eye,
Taking Henrik on a sleepover.
they're taking the pup home for a couple of weeks in a trial period Austin Pets Alive calls a sleepover, just in time for the holidays.
I'm excited to have a new little buddy for Christmas.
He gets to open some presents, make his Christmas a little better.
APA Communications Director Luis Sanchez says for the holidays, they've already adopted out about 30 dogs and 50 cats.
It's great to see families here, full families with the kids, making that decision together.
They say when it comes to a new pet, it's important to give the animal plenty of space and love.
Give the animals the patience they need because they're not going to transition within a day.
They say there's no such thing as a free lunch, but amid laughter,
yes, we can do that,
and Christmas music, that's exactly what was waiting for diners at Taquitos Feliz on Tuesday.
Food is delicious. It is absolutely marvelous.
This was Taquitos Feliz's way of celebrating 1 year open. Cesar Sanchez Guzman says he did the same thing last year. One thing heard over and over again was yum, the other, thank you.
I'm happy that people are doing good things for this world.
This is such a blessing. This is truly a blessing.
But why give away free food? Sanchez Guzman says there's always a need amid pressure to buy Christmas gifts and other expenses. He wants food to be the last thing on his diners' minds.
We got the best volunteers in the world. A lot of hours going here, a lot of untold stories, and a lot of heroes walk out of this place.
They've been hard at work, loading up toys, coats, bikes, and anything a family in need long before the holiday season, working year-round. And according to Forgotten Child Fund President Kelly Simmons, while it's hard work, he knows it's worth it.
We see people struggle and parents, and it ain't the kids' fault.
Simmons isn't alone, as he teams up year in and year out with law enforcement and emergency services.
Public safety is a calling, and there's no limit to the giving.
For 20 years, Simmons says he's been fighting to help those in need. And in those 20 years, the feeling of helping someone has never gotten old.
But really get out that truck and put a smile on a kid's face, and you wouldn't believe how many people that come back to us and say, this has been a life-changing event for my whole entire family.
Next here on the National News Desk, a growing number of medical patients out there now getting hit with surprise charges at the doctor's office, the new fees, and what you can do to fight back. A growing number of patients now finding they're getting hit with surprise bills from their doctor's offices for unexplained charges and things that used to come free. Spotlight on America correspondent Angie Moreski tonight investigating why patients are increasingly getting nickeled and dimed.
Cherie Vasquez loves to garden, but hurt her neck and ended up going to a pain clinic in Huntsville, Alabama for help, where she got numbing injections.
It was the doctor's office. I paid my copay, which was $60.
She had 2 visits, 7 injections, and thought that was it.
$979 charge.
But this September, a year later, she was blindsided by additional bills totaling $1,900 on top of her copays and nearly $4,000 her insurance paid.
And they're outpatient services.
The surprise charges came from the hospital that owns the doctor's office, even though she never went to the hospital.
What was your reaction when you saw those charges?
To be honest, I felt anger. They didn't tell me that they were going to bill me separately. They did. If I would have known this, I would have never gotten those injections.
Unexpected fees from doctor's office visits are becoming more common, even for things that used to be free and included in the service, like using your patient portal, room disinfection fees, the doctor answering emails, and writing prescriptions and referrals.
This is another medical bill from a patient in Virginia who also contacted Spotlight. She didn't want to go on camera, but told us she got some slightly bad news at an office visit and cried. Then was stunned to see this $20 charge for a brief emotional behavioral assessment on her bill.
We have a system that is dysfunctional and broken.
Cynthia Fisher is founder of PatientRightsAdvocate.org, a nonprofit that fights for medical billing transparency.
It's all about maximizing profits.
She blames charges like these on changes in the healthcare industry away from private practice. 80% of doctors today are employed by corporate entities.
The doctors being owned by the insurance companies primarily and the hospitals and private equity now is its big business.
Spotlight contacted the American Medical Association to get insight on why doctors are charging these fees. A spokesperson told us some services, like answering emails, can be a significant time drain for doctors, justifying additional fees. He also said Medicare reimbursements to physicians have declined by nearly 30% over the past 2 decades and called the Medicare payment system broken. Spotlight also called Huntsville Hospital.
Yes, hello.
Which owns the doctor's office where Cherie went.
Why would she get a bill from the hospital?
The accounting department told us it could be a facility fee or equipment fee. The hospital declined an interview, but sent Spotlight a statement saying the billing practice is the same for every patient and is communicated with the patient up front before the service, although Cherie disputes that.
I decided to fight back. I don't want to pay for something that I don't believe is right and is fair.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Angie Moreski.
Cherie is now challenging those bills, although we've learned she just received another bill threatening to send her to collections, which is not allowed by federal rules when you're in dispute over a medical bill. More information on how to fight those medical bills online at spotlightinvestigates.com. Stay with us. We're back in 90 seconds. Happy Hanukkah to those celebrating the Festival of Lights. It's already started on the East Coast, and any minute in Central Time right now after sunset, tonight Jews will light the first candle in their menorahs to commemorate the miracle that happened just under 2,200 years ago when the Jews defended their holy temple in Jerusalem from invading Greek armies and kept their sacred lamp lit for 8 days straight without the oil needed to keep that flame going. The Mega Millions jackpot's still up for grabs tonight. No Christmas Eve winner to report here, so making Friday night's drawing an estimated $1.5 billion. The one-time cash value payout would be about $516 million. Not bad there. This is the 7th time this lottery has eclipsed the $1 billion mark, and if someone does take home that grand prize Friday, it would be the largest December winner ever. What a way to end the year. That does it for us here on this edition of the National News Desk. I'm Ryan Smith. Thank you for watching.